The Convergence Enigma as a premise is kind of what this visual is meant to represent, is that there's all these different aspects of the phenomena: ghost, UFO, Sasquatch, aliens, magic, science, even some aspects of science. And they're all occurring somewhat connected in some way, with humanity being kind of the central central point within the observance of the phenomena. And so, how I got started is I've been doing IT process improvement for 20 years. And one of the things as an IT process guy is that I look for unrealized patterns in how people are carrying out various tasks in their daily activities, and help identify where there are opportunities for efficiency gains or improvements or things like that. So carry that skill set that I employ in my professional career over to the UFO or phenomena world. And I'm a MUFON field investigator. As you all know, just joined the ERT. I have an eidetic memory. And so I use all of the different skill sets to then basically look for patterns which may have gone unrecognized across different aspects of the phenomena. Um, I also am a podcast host and kind of an amateur researcher on my own. Been hosting a podcast for 6 years. Just recently, I joined Dave Scott over at Spaced Out Radio. I do the UFO report 2 nights a week. And so I basically, using my what I needed to do from a podcasting perspective to learn about all these different phenomena and research them to present on the podcast, it's given me a wide breadth of interaction across whether it be poltergeist, UFO, Bigfoot, other cryptids, whatever the case may be. And so all of that kind of lives in my brain, and every now and then things will jump out. Somebody will say, "Well, have you heard about this case in UFO?" And I'll say, "That sounds a lot like this case as a poltergeist." And so that's where this all comes together. So I want to start off well with looking at kind of what are my experiences, because I think that each one of my experiences has built upon the previous to again get me to a point of really looking at and perceiving these things differently. So, started out for me, I had psychic experiences when I was a little kid. Then they kind of went away once I hit around the age of 17 or 18. I would say went away, but probably they were always there. I just didn't recognize them as what they were. But in August of 2019, right after my birthday, I had a dream, or what I have come to realize was a memory recall that occurred while I was sleeping. And the reason I know it's a memory recall is because it involves smells. I have smell recognition from the dream, which is not typically something associated with a dreaming state. So I had this vivid dream in August 2019 where I was standing in a field at my grandparents' farm in Shelbyville, Kentucky. And I was holding the hand of something, not really sure what at the time. And above my head was a craft that was hovering probably 50 to 75 feet above my head. Um, this thing turned to me. I knew that it turned to me, but I couldn't see it turn to me in my dream, in my recall. And it looked down at me and said that I would have a very interesting life. Now, I have since unpacked a lot of the content related to that dream, but it's not, I don't think it's directly applicable to today's topic, so I won't go into that detail here. But if anybody wants to know the additional detail, I'm happy to share it offline. So that really caused me to, again, in August 2019, what did this mean? What did this perceived dream that felt more like reality mean? How did it blur the lines between what is dreaming and what is awake? And so that was what started me on my path to investigation. Then Just a week later, I started with doing the podcasting with my friend. We called it Fearscape Podcast originally. It was also a radio show that we did out of a local radio station in Louisville, Kentucky. And through that radio show slash podcast, I had the need, as stated, to really drive into various intensive, kind of research around UFO cases and cryptids and paranormal cases, and just really expanding my knowledge exponentially on the whole topic of the phenomena. Um, I studied unusual stories. I looked at histories. I listened to, we had a segment called Listener Stories where people would write in and tell us their own experiences, and we would read those on the air. So, hearing it from various different perspectives, some from all over the world. We had a person write in from Saudi Arabia about a jinn encounter. So, again, looking at things from various different angles and aspects. Then in September of 2019, I went to a ghost investigation. And in that ghost investigation, I used dowsing rods for the very first time. Um, and had an amazing experience that I probably didn't fully understand at the time when it was occurring. But, we were doing a sequence where there was a psychic who was present. She was asking questions, and we were getting responses in both a Ouija board, and also with these dowsing rods. Um, and so again, it caused me to question these energies at play and how these things could have influenced and impacted these dowsing rods. And the kind that are shown here were different than what was in use. What was in use had a larger diameter outer pipe with the rod sitting inside. So as long as I keep my hands perfectly still, the rods move, um, without my interference, more so that they use my energy to move. Then in May of 2020, my friend and I were in my backyard. Again, this was in Kentucky. And around 2 o'clock in the morning, we spotted a light moving across the sky from what would have been southeast towards the northwest. It was low on the horizon. Not at the time of night where you would typically see satellites. My friend had a green laser pointer, so in front of the light, never at the light, but in front of the light, he would signal. And each time he did, the light would flash back at us, but much like when I, kind of relate to not a satellite, excuse me, a lighthouse where it is dim, it gets brighter, 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 it's full at its peak, brightness, and then it starts getting dim again as if it was coming around. So we watched that for probably about 5 minutes, each time signaling, each time getting a response, but the light kind of continued to move on its path and really didn't deviate to interact with us at all. We continued to watch in that area. My friend happened to turn and look over his left shoulder, and when he did so, above an oak tree in my backyard was this bright white orb. We both spun and looked at it for maybe 10 to 15 seconds. And then it shot straight up in the sky, leaving a cone of light behind it. And then the pinnacle of, or the peak of that cone then followed by that light back up and it disappeared. Again, causing me to question what was this? How could this be? Each one, I think, like I said, evolving. In January of 21, I came out to visit a friend, Shane Hurd. You all probably know Shane. He's an ERT person as well as the assistant state director in Arizona. And we went out and did a CE5 near his house and observed an orb. This is a still taken from the video that we captured. Um, on the other side, there's a highway right in this area here, and on the other side of that highway, there's nothing but open desert for miles and miles. And there's was this orb, and on the video, it for lack of a better word, it looks like it's undulating. This undulating orb that was just sitting off in the distance. Everybody always asks, why didn't we go to try to investigate it and get closer? At the time, you're in awe of this thing that's happening in front of you, and the last thing you want to do is take your eyes off of it. It might go away and you may not see it again. I think that's probably true of a lot of people we speak with, that It's kind of the same, sentiment. Even devout researchers, when the thing is happening, they don't want to leave that thing that's happening. Then in September of 21, I saw a black triangle in Kentucky. At the time, I also had a Madar unit. I think that at least maybe Steve Foss on the call, maybe associated with Madar. But Madar is a small black box that you put in your house, and it passively records certain readings such as compass, EMF, and things. And although the EMF did not spike when the black triangle sighting occurred within a mile of that unit, the compass did swing 186 degrees at the time of the sighting and then swing back the next minute afterwards. Again, though, causing me to question. Then here in Arizona, in July of 23, I was taking thermal images. This is a thermal camera that clicks into the bottom of a phone. And I took a picture. This is my daughter's room. And in this photo is something standing in front of the window. The investigator and me went back the next day under the same conditions and took a similar photo. And as you can see, there's nothing blocking the view there. My daughter was at school. This was taken in the middle of the day. As you can see, the heat ranges are close to what they were on each day. So whatever this is was very cold, and it was just standing in front of the window in my daughter's room. Um, then most recently, I had this picture. So this is taken September of this year. There's a side by side. So this is a chair in my backyard. It's a zero gravity chair. And I went out in the backyard and asked if I could take its picture. Snapped 3 pictures, and this little green guy here showed up sitting in my chair in one of them. You can see that, through the arm of the chair, there's nothing here, but in here, there's this green section. Then above the chair, again, there's nothing, but here, there's kind of a green outline, an eye here, a little nose. And if you look very closely, you can vaguely see a little bit of a little foot sticking up right here. So again, each one of these has caused me to really rethink at different kind of pivotal moments of my life, rethink what I thought I knew about the nature of reality. Um, and so along the way, it has led me from, just being curious about whatever the topic or whatever the situation or the case was, to really wanting to understand not just the experiencer's point of view, but possibly what could have been at play to help the experiencer understand or experience what they did. Um, so I'm a scientist at heart, let's say, and so I always kind of take the approach of, can I repeat it? Can I understand or explain the conditions in which it occurred? Always starting with kind of that hypothesis and then building from there. And really looking at, because I've had experiences across all aspects of the phenomena at this stage, there doesn't seem to be any one part of the phenomena that I'm honing in on. Some people always have UFO experiences, or some people always have Sasquatch experiences. But I would even gain or guess that they probably are having other experiences that they dismiss because they're so honed in and focused on one aspect of the phenomena. So, what is the theory? I'll take a look at the Mothman prophecies. If you're familiar with the book written by John Keel, but you've only ever seen the movie, I highly recommend you read the book, because the book, only about the last 5 or 6 chapters of the book deals with Mothman. Everything else that was occurring to John in this time was about the UFO flap that was happening in West Virginia in 1966. He was down there as called by a newspaper journalist in the area to witness all these UFOs that were flying over the mountains in West Virginia in 66. While he was there, we also get the Mothman. And although he doesn't make mention of it, there's also a connection with Indrid Cold. Now, if you're not familiar with the Ingrid Cold case, it was a humanoid figure that appeared to an individual named Woody Derenberger in 1966 in the general area of Point Pleasant. There was a sighting of Ingrid Cold before the Woody Derenberger experiencer, and there was actually a sighting of Ingrid Cold before that one that happened in New Jersey. Um, so, what does kind of all this mean, or where does it going? So, what I want to look at is electromagnetic fields. So the nature of electromagnetic fields, the regions of, where oscillating electric and magnetic fields interact and influence their surroundings. We people have created a lot of EMS sources, right, with power lines and Wi-Fi devices, and there have been a lot of experiments and discoveries with EMF. In modern life, we have, like I said, mobile phones and Wi-Fi and household electronics. Um, a lot of older houses, before we started learning how to properly shield electrical lines, had their electrical lines were basically wrapped in paper. And there's high EMF in those houses, and people in those houses sometimes report even having negative experiences, headaches, nausea, things like that. We know that there's EMF beyond our planet. There's fields that extend beyond Earth. Earth has a large one, as we know. Is what helped deflect a lot of the solar flares that come from the sun and produce, for those in the north, it produces those northern lights or the aurora borealis. Um, and so, what I started to look at is with this prevalence of EMF, um, and the fact that wildlife needs EMF so rapidly in order for birds to migrate, for a lot of species to migrate, to detect prey, etc., is how EMF may be playing a role in these UFOs and the surrounding related phenomena. So I'm going to skip just a little bit ahead, and I'm going to go to UFO sightings and EMF evidence. So many UFO sightings we know are accompanied by electromagnetic disturbances, shutting down engines, causing radio static, things of that nature. So some of those cases, for example, are Level in Texas, November 2nd and 3rd, 1957. Over a dozen motorists across 10-mile stretch reported a glowing egg-shaped craft. Engine stalled, headlights dim, radios cut out as the object approached. When the craft departed, electrical systems spontaneously restarted. There was clear skies. The Project Blue Book actually attributed it to ball lightning or St. Elmo's fire, but no storms were recorded that night. Key EM indicators, repeated power failures. The local sheriff experienced the same phenomenon in a patrol car, and one of the earliest multi-witness of EM interference cases on record. And we have the Cash Landrum incident in Huffman, Texas. We got Betty Cash and Vicky Landrum and Colby Landrum observed a diamond-shaped craft emitting intense heat and light near Huffman, Texas. The car interior heated rapidly. Witnesses suffered later health issues. Electrical systems in the vehicle temporarily failed, and the object was reportedly surrounded by about 20 plus military type helicopters. Intense radiant energy affecting the skin, potential EM propulsion or directed energy field, and radiation readings taken later were inconclusive, but symptoms persisted. In the Canadian and Appalachian Mountains, we got two cases here. We've got Toronto, Canada in 1957, multiple UFO reports coincided with television signal disruption and police radio interference, potential temporal electronic blackout. And there was a Project Magnet in Canada that had recently proposed monitoring geomagnetic disturbances linked to UFOs. In West Virginia, as previously mentioned, the UFO flap in 66. There were witnesses described electrical surges, TV snow, and dead radios, reports of car headlights dimming, and compasses spinning erratically along Route 62 in the TNT area. And then I included this case. I see Kathleen's on the call tonight, so hopefully she won't shut me down. But I think in the Betty Barney Hill abduction case, there's also a strong EM piece where we've got A compass placed in the car's trunk near the area where the circular shiny spots appeared spun erratically and would not stabilize. And the car engine and radio repeatedly faltered during the approach of the craft. So again, we've got EM interference happening with these craft at play. Well, EM interaction is also very much used in ghost investigations. Paranormal researchers propose that ghosts or residual energies can actually draw from and modulate local electron EMF fields to produce measurable effects. They often use something what's called a K2 EMF reader, and place it in a room and ask the spirits that are there to interact with the meter. And I myself have personally had this happen where it would be on maybe the second green and we would ask questions and the device would light up all the way to red and then go back down to the second green in response to the questions that were being asked. There's also battery drains. I experienced this on a recent camping trip with Phoenix MUFON. I had a fully charged flashlight and used it for maybe 5 minutes and it was completely drained. EMF spikes near reported apparitions, EVPs, which electronic voice phenomena, shifts in temperature, even sometimes the kind of smell of ozone. And then with cryptid hypothesis, and I did include Sasquatch as a cryptid here, although I can go either way. But camera and battery failure, near encounters, compasses spinning, static electricity sensations, audible hums or distortion, a static crackle. Again, these are all things associated with a high EM field. Um, so getting now to looking at ley lines. So ley lines came into this investigation. When I originally started this, it was not looking at ley lines, but as a part of my investigation, I stumbled across the idea or concept of ley lines. And so I wanted to see how it would incorporate it into this model that I was building. And surprisingly enough, it does seem to at least correlate with the data that I was already capturing. So the phrase ley line first appeared in 1921 by a British amateur archaeologist. They were basically looking at, these ancient sites such as Stonehenge and how they would have been built on these in these lines or rows on the geographical map, that there was something significant about these lines that existed. Alfred Watkins described these ley lines as kind of straight alignments connecting ancient landmarks, like I just said. A New Age reinterpretation is that they are kind of energy pathways that connect spiritual sites and monuments. And then modern day line mapping actually looks to connect how they connect maybe UFO occurrences. Ley lines, like it says, are believed to link ancient monuments. They might also channel the Earth's life force, similar to like telluric currents or the feng shui dragon lines. And they also are usually linked to paranormal activity and are used by healers for the Earth energy. So I went out and downloaded a KMZ file from vortexmaps.com and imported that KMZ file into Google Earth. And what you see on the right-hand side is just a screenshot taken of what that KMZ file looks like. And so each one of those crisscrossing lines is a potential energy line or ley line in the vernacular. The way that these are constructed is not the right word. The way these are identified is by taking a model like, or taking a shape like a dodecahedron, picking one of the intersection points on a dodecahedron and laying it on top of a significantly important site, such as the Great Pyramid in Giza. And then what you are left with is these connecting points across where all this dodecahedron expands across around the Earth based on this one central point. And that's what you're left with, is these connecting points, these connecting lines. Where there are intersections of these lines, it has been found that there are also representation of electromagnetic vortices. And so this map, and the map we'll get into in a little bit, is based off of a dodecahedron and a circular shape placed along the Great Pyramid. And then what we're left with is this kind of overlapping map of energy lines. So ley lines are theorized to align with the Earth's electromagnetic fields, to alert currents, like I said. Geophysics recognizes EMF anomalies near underground water, minerals, and fault lines, which can affect local energy readings. And many animals, such as birds and insects, are sensitive to subtle electromagnetic fields. So now we get into the case. So this is the case that, for me, changed everything. George asked in the beginning how I got involved in all of this. So over here, this infield poltergeist, my friend and co-host was really into the horror movie scene. And so he asked me to look into all the different cases that were the influence for a lot of the different movies like The Conjuring and things like that. And I started looking into the infield poltergeist, which happened in 1977 in a borough just outside of London. And when I started looking into it, I just whimsically thought, I wonder if there are other paranormal type sightings that also occurred. And what I found is that there were significant others. So over here in Wales, we've got the Broadhaven um, school event where school children saw a UFO land in the field adjacent to their school. We've also got a couple of humanoid sightings. And these sightings and that event predate the infield poltergeist, as if the appearance of that UFO or potential those humanoid sightings um, changed or modified the EM in the area to allow for additional contact to occur. Also predating postdating the infield poltergeist is a face sighting up here near Cambridge, where an actual patrol officer witnessed 4 to 5 small entities dancing in a field and kind of like a ring around the rosy pattern before disappearing. And he attributed it to Fae. Could it have also been spirits? Very much so. So this is the case that for me I started looking at. Like I said, there's this one case. If you just look at it from an infield poltergeist, then you would have missed that there's these other kind of supporting cases that also go along with an event of phenomena flap that occurred in the area. All of these things happened in 1977. I also want to point out that there is a convergence point here with those different energy lines. And then each one of these kind of lines that are in this screenshot, this green, blue, orange, blue here, black here, these are all energy lines that are crisscrossing around the globe. So each one of these is also, especially the one in Wales, is very close to or connected to an energy line. The idea is that, this is a line drawn on a map, but the energy from these energy lines extends about 50 miles in all directions. So, down, potentially below into the earth, up into the sky, on either side of it. So these are definitely within the range of being affected by the energy that might be flowing across these various energy lines. Washington State. So we've got, of course, in 1947, we have the Murray Island incident as well as Kenneth Arnold's sighting, which coined the term the flying saucer. There's a strong spiritual significance of the mountains in the area, revered by indigenous tribes for this, the energy that's there and the spirits that are believed to reside there. Um, Mount Rainier is considered a spiritual beacon tied to legends of portals and higher realms in inner Earth civilizations. Again, these crisscrossing and intersection of these different ley lines and energy lines. The Mothman UFO encounters. So right here is Point Pleasant. That's where the TNT area is and where Mothman appeared. Here's Parkersburg, which is where Woody Derenberger was on his way to when he encountered Ingrid Cold. A lot of the UFO flap happened in the Appalachian Mountains all around the area. So again, there seems to be some correlation potentially of these energy lines. Also, in case maybe some are not aware, dating back to a time of Pangea when all the continents were connected, the Appalachian Mountains is the second oldest mountain range in the world at around 4.3 billion years old. Recently, within the last few years, they have found that the cliffs that extend into Wales are a part of the same mountain range as the Appalachian Mountains that are in the eastern U.S. So the energies that are there associated with the Appalachian Mountains seem to be strong and maybe correlate to why there is so much activity both reported in the Appalachian Mountains in the U.S. and in the U.K. Being that I'm from Kentucky, I had to include some Kentucky legends. So we've got down here around Hopkinsville, in the Hopkinsville area, we have the Hopkinsville Goblins in 1955, where mysterious goblin-like creatures were, basically terrorized a small family overnight. They were shot at, bullets ricocheted off of them, making kind of a tinging noise as they did. In 1955, also, the same exact day, we have the clawed beast of the Ohio up here near Evansville, Indiana, where a woman was swimming with her kids. She was dragged underwater. When she was finally able to be pulled free, she had three scratches down her legs and some odd mud in those scratches. When they tested the mud, it came from an underground river system that ran through a cave from in Indiana across or under the Ohio River and then into Kentucky. If you're not familiar with Kentucky, it's full of a cave system called the Mammoth Cave System, and that Mammoth Cave System does extend partly up into Indiana and Ohio. Um, and so, it's possible that whatever this creature was that occurred here, if this is all one big, hollow, if you will, for things to move around in, then the Hopkinsville case may be related. Also, noting here that around Bowling Green, there is an intersection point here. That also is where the Corvette Museum is. So if anybody buys a lot of Corvettes, it may be because the energy lines are influencing your purchases. um, Next up is Datlov Pass. If you're not familiar with this incident, this is in Russia. And basically, some school kids went camping into the mountain. They were found several days later. Some had frostbite toes. They all had shed, pretty much all had shed their clothes. Things were strewn about in disarray. It's oftentimes attributed to potentially being a Yeti case, a Yeti intervention. But also look in its correspondence to this ley line here that runs through the area. The Virginia UFO incident made, kind of famous recently with a documentary from James Fox. You can see here that this UVG 49, this is one of the intersection points on that dodecahedron that I spoke about that's kind of overlaid over the Earth to create these different points. And so this is very close to that intersection point. In Virginia, you can see there's a line here, there's a line here. There's lots of energy lines that kind of radiate out from this point intersecting with the Virginia area. The Colores UFO incident, again, 1977. Um, experienced numerous UFO sightings, strange lights in the sky. Many had physical effects, mimicking or illustrating the potential impact of EMF. And as you can see, there are several different energy lines all around the Colores area. Northeastern phenomena. You got Montauk, New York, if anybody's familiar with the Project Montauk. Supposedly, they were broadcasting signals in order to interfere and cause local residents to go crazy, playing with what that could mean for population manipulation. The 2024 drone sightings, I've got that pinned all the way down here in the corner, also close to a ley line. Indrid cold sighting up here, this one that I spoke about earlier. close to a ley line. So again, there's this potential for energy and ley lines and the energetic lines or the energy they carry to somehow be related to these kind of profound cases. If you look at Arizona, because I'm in Arizona, one of these connection points is just below the border in Sonora Desert in Mexico. But we've been seeing lights in the Northeast along in Mount Lemon, along towards Mount Lemon. Again, there's a ley line here. Where I live, which is right along this green ley line, I'm a mile from it. I get all the activity that I just laid out in the first, 5 slides. Well, two of those activity items are within proximity to that green ley line. The others in Kentucky, I was also close proximity to a ley line. Um, we've seen lights off to the northeast from the kind of carefree Arizona area here that seem to intersect with one of these ley lines. So the idea that these ley lines to carry the Earth's energy and kind of disperse it and distribute it around the globe, and where they converge or come together, there is oftentimes a vortex that is detectable, and then this vortex serves as kind of like um, a release, if you will, of this energy that's flowing across these lines. And so as this energy moves along, there seems to be a lot of cases that occur in close proximity. I want to shift presentation now to looking at, I've actually got Google Earth pulled up. And so I'm going to change my share. So recently there was in the UFO UAP hearings that came out, there was an individual who talked about seeing a black triangle at the air base that is in Virginia. And he said it kind of went off towards the north and then shot out over the ocean. So that would have been, let me see if I can, I think the base is somewhere in this vicinity. I used to have a pin, but I lost that pin for some reason. But if it goes up to the north and then shoots out over the ocean, this is a ley line here. Um, there's also, let me see, go over here. Here in the Oregon area, I think I'm in Oregon. No, I'm still in California. Here in the Oregon area, there's a large cavern system here in the kind of southwestern part of Oregon. And there have been a lot of Bigfoot sightings and things that have occurred here. And again, there's a ley line here as well as an intersection point nearby. So I actually wanted to open it up now, if we can, to maybe any questions or if anybody has a specific case that we want to try to look at in Google Earth to see if, if it corresponds to a ley line.
Hey, Josh.
Hey,
It's Bill. I'm sorry. Somebody else raised their hand properly, but in Michigan, I see, which is my home state, um, there is a convergence of lines. It
yes.
seems like a sort of a central hub. Is that meaningful in any respect?
So because there's not a UVG marker on this, it just means this is not a location of the dodecahedron or the circular map that was used for the creation of the lines.
Mhm.
But it does signify that there is at least a convergence of several different energy lines here. So likely there's a lot of activity that occurs kind of around this area.
Mm.
There might even actually be a vortice that exists at this different intersection point. The only way to know would be to go to this location or close to this location and perform tests.
Yeah, UFO wise, I wouldn't say it's noteworthy compared to the rest of the state necessarily, but that is an interesting thing. Also, just sort of as a writer question, you mentioned co-host before. Do you have some kind of a show?
Oh, yes. I have a podcast called The Shadow Signal.
Oh, cool.
It's available on all the podcast networks as well as YouTube. And we currently put out an episode a month because we're both busy dads, and so don't have the time to devote to podcasting as much as we used to. But we've got over 200 episodes since the start of the podcast almost 6 years ago.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just question about going earlier in your presentation. What compelled you to take the photo, the thermal image of your daughter's room, especially since she wasn't there and it was the day? I'm just curious, like, because it was a pretty interesting video. Like, what made you do that?
I was looking for heat loss, or rather, I guess I was looking for where heat was intruding into my house here in Arizona and how I could potentially better insulate my house so that I wouldn't have to run my AC all the time. Um, so that it was a totally just, happenstance that I went into every room, every bedroom, all the rooms, and I took all kinds of pictures, and that was the only one where something showed up in it. So I don't know if it was, I caught it off guard or what, but yeah, it was very, benign that it just happened to show up in that. But when I was reviewing the images, it's like, well, what is this? That prompted me to, like I said, the very next day under the same conditions to take a similar picture, and it's not there. So, and what's really interesting about that, Mike, is I was recently watching a Russ Coulthart interview with um, he calls himself Magic Mike, I think. He probably needs to drop the nickname, but he supposedly is a psionics formerly associated with Skywatcher, and he apparently called this entity to come to his backyard. And one of the images or videos that he shared on the Ross Coulthart show matches that thermal that I have of that entity captured in my bedroom. So I'm actually working on a short little YouTube video to put up just to say, look, give this guy a little bit of evidence, credence, because here is an example where it's almost the exact same form and figure. Yep. George, I see your hand up. George, you're on mute if you're talking. Let me see if
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
I got you now. Okay.
Yeah. People may not be familiar with Indrid Cold, so could you comment on that?
Sure. So in 66, a gentleman by the name of Woody Derenberger was on his way home. He was like a traveling repair salesman guy. And for, I think, sewing machines was what his focus was, or maybe it was TVs. But he was a traveling repair guy, and he was on his way back to Parkersburg, West Virginia. And these, what he thought were headlights, approached him from behind. It was dark, and he signaled for them to go around. But when they passed him, there was no car next to him, and instead, this what he described as kind of like an hourglass flipped on its side, horizontal, landed in front of him, and the door opened, and this individual stepped out who was wearing kind of like blue coveralls, and his hair was real slicked back. And he walked around to the passenger side of Woody's van, and Woody, of course, didn't want to roll the window down, but the guy spoke to him telepathically and said it was, safe. And they basically had a conversation there at the side of Woody's van telepathically. He said this individual said his name was Ingrid Cold. He was there. He asked a lot of questions about Parkersburg. He asked what it was with all the lights, and what he said it was a city. And Ingrid said, well, where I'm from, we have different communities. And they're kind of like cities, but they're a little bit different. And it was just a kind of very, um, just kind of a traveler in the area wanting to know what things were type conversation. But then when he was done, he said he thanked him for his time, and he said that he would be in touch again. And from there, Woody later released a book about his encounters with Ingrid Cold and Ingrid Cold's crew. Excuse me. And for the life of me, I can't think of. I think it's just called My Encounters with Union Cole. I have to look up the book title. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean it's a fascinating story. And like I said, it was later identified that he actually appeared to two other guys on Route 62 before he appeared to Woody, and then also he appeared in New Jersey before he even appeared to the other two in West Virginia. And the ones he appeared to in New Jersey, he was a different form. He looked more robotic. He had a shaved head. He had a silver suit on, and he was standing next to a fence. And it startled the two boys, and so they ran to get their parents. And when they came back, he was gone.
Thank you. Maybe I'll get that book and read it.
It
Sounds
is a
interesting.
really interesting book. I mean, apparently he has crewmates. They tell him that they're from the galaxy of Ganymede, and they come from the planet Lanulos in the galaxy of Ganymede. Um, so it's a very interesting story.
Hmm. Any more questions from anybody?
I see Kathleen has a hand up.
I have one. Yes, if you wouldn't mind going to Washington State on your map, please. Because I'm from Olympia, Washington, and we have a lot of activity all in that area. Our latest case that we went up to, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was up in Bellingham, Washington, where we tried to establish a new group up there. So we had quite a large turnout. There was probably 45, 50 people there. And it's a college town. It's a small college town, but you've also got naval bases and ley lines and really, really interesting stories from people that see things all along there, along the mountains, the Cascade Mountains. And of course, you've got the ocean on the left-hand side, and you've got the Quinault Reservation and all the different things that are happening throughout the state. So I think we get a lot of activity similar to what you've been talking about tonight. So,
yeah, and this yellow line is a border line, but the white line here is a ley line, this orange line is a ley line, and this other
Yep.
orange line is a ley line.
Yeah, we've
so
been
you've got an
talking a lot
intersection
about that.
intersection of three at least near
Mhm.
Bellingham. So
Yeah, and also Sasquatch. We get a lot of Sasquatch
Mhm.
activity around here too. So I mean, it's pretty incredible how that works.
I heard about a case today about I have not researched it entirely, so I'll mention it in passing. But a gentleman named Joe Hauser, who runs the Montana Vortex Center in Montana, he apparently had an experience where I think it was somewhere down in the Oregon area where they brought out a Tesla coil to attempt to open a vortex to allow Sasquatch to come through. And they raised the local EM field using that Tesla coil, and they said that later that evening they did have activity from Sasquatch.
We've also gone down to Mount Adams, and seen the orb lights come out of the mountains, and in that area too, there's a lot of Sasquatch activity. So it's you get a trifecta of mountains and ley lines and energy. It's interesting.
I see Robert, you've got your hand up.
Josh, very good presentation, very interesting. If you could go back to Michigan, Lake Huron, Upper Michigan Peninsula, you zeroed in on a place called, let's see if I can see it. Yeah, Mackinac City, which is sort of to the lower right-hand corner. That's near a bunch of ley lines. And that is exactly where, after they shot down the Chinese balloon in 2023, February 2023, that's where the pilot shot down the octagon-shaped object over Lake Huron. And 2 years prior to that, there was a MUFON report of a similar octagon object. So I just thought that was very interesting that there was an American fighter jet shot down an octagon-shaped object
Yeah.
right after the Chinese balloon incident in that exact area.
Well, there's a famous case in Kentucky, because it was the first death after World War II of a pilot in Kentucky, in which a captain was chasing a UFO, and ultimately crashed. They think he was probably chasing. The official decision is he was chasing a weather balloon, and he ran out of gas. But he was in a P-51 Mustang, out of Kentucky, out of the Fort Knox area, and he was chasing a UFO. The radio messages back and forth is that it was not. There was no indication that it was a weather balloon that he was chasing at these great speeds across the state of Kentucky. So, unfortunately, because weather balloons exist, they have become an easy scapegoat, I think, for a lot of aerial phenomena. But when you look at the preponderance of, let's say, convergences that exist around some of these sightings, it starts to paint a different picture. I don't know who raised their hand first, but I know, George, you had it up before I called on Bob.
I was just wondering if anybody's ever actually measured the electromagnetic forces around these ley lines, around the nodes.
There have been a lot of different books written about them over the years. If you're interested, you can go to vortexmaps.com, and there's a list of all the different books that people have written about ley lines, kind of how they've come up with these various models, how they're overlaid over the earth. But there are probably about 9 or so different books on just that website, and there are many more on the topic available online, Amazon and bookshelf.com, things like that.
Thank you.
Yep. Go to Chris.
Yes, Josh, I want to say great presentation. I loved it. And I was going to ask you, what is your favorite case out of all that you've researched so far?
Favorite case. I mean, I am really drawn to the 66 West Virginia stuff, probably because of its close proximity to Kentucky. I've been there. I've been to the TNT area. There is definitely a special kind of energy there. Um, we did some Estes method stuff at the cemetery that is near where the bridge collapsed occurred. It's just a phenomenal, different kind of feeling area. Outside of that, I've also been really energized lately of the lights that we keep kind of seeing here in Arizona, that are again kind of towards the northwest and also tend to align with, or at least appear to align with, these ley lines. So that's been my local kind of passion to research those and see, what insights they might provide.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Hey, Bill.
Hey, is it possible that you could go to Michigan, particularly Lake Superior? So kind of up to the,
Uh,
yep, east ley lines converge over the lake up there.
yep.
So that actually is one of the most well-known UFO cases from Michigan, the Kinross incident. So for those who may or may not know it, November 23rd, 1953, an object appeared on the radar of Kinross Air Force Base up in the Upper Peninsula there, and they scrambled an F-89 Scorpion jet and watched as the jet got closer and closer and closer to this unknown object. They lost radio contact with the pilots, and then the jet and this unknown object converged, and then both disappeared forever. They never found the plane. They never found the pilots. And it's pretty much, yeah, right smack dab in the middle of Lake Superior.
Mm. Yep. I don't know if anybody's watched the Skinwalker Ranch show on History Channel, but one of the things that they think they have is maybe a portal of sorts that sits somewhere above what's called the Triangle there on the Skinwalker Ranch. And so I was watching a few episodes back, and they were detecting that 1.6 gigahertz signal. Travis says, let's go launch a rocket right now while we're getting it. So he launches a rocket and the signal goes away. And then they're like, well, crap. And so then they launch another rocket, again, just to see, and the signal comes back. And so it kind of occurred to me, maybe there's something about the frequency of launching a rocket that causes the portal to open and close, kind of like a garage door clicker, if you will. So it's interesting. I wonder if, if they go off of that assumption, maybe launching a rocket in close proximity causes signal to occur. Launching another rocket causes it to go off. How many times they would have to replicate that before they would have some sort of a strong premise that that's the case? I know the History Channel show is probably edited together, and there's probably a lot more happening that we don't get the opportunity to see or hear about. But it'd be interesting to know if that's something they've explored. Any
more
other questions?
I guess not.
Okay. Thank you,
Josh,
everyone.
Thank you. This was very, very, very entertaining, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this for us.